Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Noralis Rodriguez Cos, and on behalf also of my collaborator, Marina Carides, who's also present here, we would like to welcome you to the second part of the conversion of Kahumanu. Today, we will watch the rest of the play and engage in a conversation with director uh, of the play, Dr. Justina Taft Mattos, who teaches for the Performing Arts Department at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. And along with Dr. Mattos, we also have playwright Victoria Nalani Kneubuhl will also be with us today. So I'm going to give you a very short introduction of Victoria Nalani Kneubuhl. Is a Hawaii writer. Her plays have been performed in Hawaii, the continental United States, and have toured to Britain, Asia, and the Pacific. Her anthology of plays, Hawai'i, was published by the University of Hawaii Press. She is the author of 3 mystery novels set in Hawaii: Murder Casts at Shadow, Murder Leaves Its Mark, and Murder Frames the Scene, also published by US Press. Her short story has appeared in various anthologies. She is the writer of and co-producer for the television series Biography Hawaii. She has received the Hawaii Award Literature and the Elliott Cates Award for Literature. So thank you so much for being with us today, Victoria and Justina. As usual, our program assistants, Amity Malloy and Carla Peña, will keep attendees muted, but please feel free to write questions in the chat. Malloy and Peña will collect those questions to be answered by the speakers during the Q&A session. And I would like to add that we have our first part of the play already in our website, islandfeminisms.org. And if you didn't watch the first part, then you can watch it there on the archives. So thank you so much again for being here. And I will give now the space to Justina and Victoria.
Okay, I think we're going to save the Q&A for afterwards, but just before we start playing the video, I want to recap where we left off with Act 1 and give Victoria a chance to say anything that she feels should be said ahead of time. So to recap where we left off with Act 1, a year after the death of her husband, Kamehameha I, and the overthrow of the traditional religious and legal system, Queen Ka'ahumanu has been struggling to maintain order in Hawaii as it's inundated with foreign ships bringing diseases and men who flagrantly disregard any attempts to curb their unethical behaviors. Sybil Bingham and Lucy Thurston have arrived in Hawaii with a small group of American missionaries. These are the first Christian missionaries and first Western women seen in the islands. They seek out the Queen, hoping to introduce her to the Christian religion. Slowly, the Hawaiian and American women get to know each other, and by the end of Act 1, Ka'ahumanu and Hana have begun to take an interest in Christianity, but Pali is still mistrustful. Act 2 opens with Hana studying biblical teachings under Sybil's tutelage. And Vicky, is there anything you want to say ahead of time before we start it?
No, I had some background of the play, but I think I'll save it till after.
Okay.
So.
All right, then we'll just begin it. And please, if you can't hear it, let me know.
What is sin? Sin is any want of conformity to or transgression of the law of God. And what is the sin by where our first parents fell? The sin by where our first parents fell was the eating of the forbidden fruit. And what is the misery of the estate wherein man fell? This one is still hard. Baptism requires study and diligence. Now try again. What is the misery of the estate wherein man fell? All mankind by their fall, lost communion with God, and are under his wrath and curse, and so made liable to all miseries in this life, to death itself, and to the pains of hell forever.
Did God leave all men to perish in the estate of sin and misery?
No. God, out of his mere good pleasure, has elected some to everlasting life, and has brought these chosen to a state of salvation by a Redeemer, the Lord Jesus Christ.
Excuse me, please.
Yes?
The doctor wishes you in the village right away. There's trouble.
Trouble?
Many have come down from the mountains where they cut the sandalwood. There's a great sickness among them.
No.
He said to bring these things.
Not that. There are supplies, there are powders from his medical supplies. You get them, Lucy. And study until I return.
What are you doing, Hannah?
Learning the word of God so that I may have baptism. Oh, what does every sin deserve? Every sin deserves God's wrath and curse, both in this life and that which is to come.
Do you believe this, Hannah?
Yes, I want to be baptized.
Why?
So that I may go to heaven.
Does God allow us to conduct in his heaven?
Yes,
Even women?
yes, we are all equal in God's sight.
Then why aren't we equal on earth?
Be quiet, Holly.
How many of the Hawaiians do you know who treat us as one of their own? How many of the Ali'i do you know who treat us as they do each other?
You don't know what you're talking about.
No, you don't know, Hannah. Things are different for you because you're Hawai'i. They treat you so, welcome you into their home as a friend because they think you're half like them. You're not like me. You've always done more for your comfort in life. You don't know what it's like to be poor. You don't know what it's like to be below everyone else. So don't say your stupid words to me, Hannah.
Holly, what is it? Why are you so angry with me? You could come here too if you wanted.
I'm sorry, Hannah. Forgive my words. I don't mean to hurt you.
The greed of men has caused many deaths. Men come from foreign lands to Iliaki, the scented sandalwood. They bring Western goods and teach the chiefs to covet these things.
They ply them with liquor until they are drunk.
Sell them useless things.
Never worth half of what they charge.
The chiefs pay in sandalwood.
The maka'ainana must go to cut the wood.
Holes the size of ships are dug.
The commoners must fill them with wood.
Peepholes.
133 and 1/3 pound. One peephole.
The wood grows high in the mountains.
Many leave their fields unattended.
Hollow ruts.
The sweet potatoes are eaten by worms.
Men, women, mothers with children go.
Today, many die.
Tomorrow, many more.
The people stayed too long.
The winds blew too cold.
The rain came too hard.
Not enough food.
Exposed to nature's elements.
Not enough to keep warm.
They came down from the green hills crying for the dead they left behind.
All for what?
So a few foreigners could increase their wealth.
Buy lace for their wives.
Crystal for their tables.
Stallions for their sons.
My dear sisters, if you knew with what misery and death the foundations of wealthy American lives, comfortable and safe, are built on. These were once a thriving people. The white men who came here for profits from sandalwood, profits from whale oil, or for the pleasure of women. I am ashamed to call my countrymen. If you had seen what I saw today, men, women, and children dying, I am sure that you would lay down your beautiful silk dresses and your colored ribbons and your lace gloves and all the finery that surrounds you and take up a Christian vow of service and poverty so that never again would you prosper from the death of others. Many chiefs have accepted this new God. My own Hawai'i wished I would believe. And Keopuola, why don't you? Some things I like. I do like that women may speak to this God. In the old days, only the kahuna could speak to God at the Hilo. And I do like that women may teach about this God as Mrs. Bingham teaches. But there's some things I just don't like. I'm afraid that this God would have too much power, that too many things would change. There's something about the Mikanen I do not trust. Something I cannot name.
They've been kind teachers to us.
Yes. And they do seem to care for the people.
They do many things for us.
You know, Hana, when I was young, I felt so strong. That is the good thing about youth, to feel strong in your body and your purpose. I was not afraid. I saw something to do and I did it. But now, the foreigners, they change everything with their wealth and their ships and their guns. They have made the power of the chiefs weak. I make a law against the sale of rum, and a ship comes full of men eager for drink. If the captain does not like the couple, he says, "Sell us rum, or I'll fire my cannon on your town." Or perhaps he sends an angry mom to make trouble and fight. What am I to do? Should I keep the law and have destruction? If we their guns coming from his country, what am I to do? Relent and give him rum? This makes the power of the chiefs look weak. In my younger days, I did not hesitate. My mind did not trouble me. The way was clear. I was not afraid. I was not afraid to take down what I knew to be wrong, or to do what I wished, but now
Things have changed so much.
yes,
I know.
the chiefs died. All my old friends and counselors. Keopuola, God. My own Hawai'i, God. Kalaimoku grows so old. His strength fades. My people die. I feel
destroyed the old one. Your people are dying.
Do something. Can't you do anything? Too many howling.
Another warship.
Another government.
Give us some new women.
Mora, call for a warship. These chiefs can't tell us what to do.
I'll do what I like. This isn't work.
England, France.
These aren't civilized human beings.
Take care of your own people.
Take care. Can you do anything?
There's too much sickness.
I need some land.
Send for a warship. Be paid.
Stupid savages.
There aren't enough children anymore.
Why did you leave your God? Can you do something?
What does everything deserve? Everyone will die.
Die.
Why?
Away. Do
Is she improved? Not much. The fever is still very high.
You should rest.
I'm all right. It's you I worry over.
You have been here all day. You too could become ill yourself.
I've slept a little.
Will she die?
No, she will not die.
Put her in the stream.
Oh, no, Polly. It could make her much
But
worse.
she'll burn up inside.
Such a stupid belief.
Oh, Sister Thurston.
I know. I spoke too sharply.
People will listen to those they feel to be kind-hearted.
It always happens when I feel tired.
Perhaps you should go back to the mission and get Reverend Bingham and the doctor. Is she going? I don't know. I can't tell if the fever is breaking her, if she's sliding into a worse state.
I'll hurry.
Yes, I'm here.
I am very sick. I had a terrible dream. I saw that place.
What place?
This place of fires.
Oh, you must lay down. You must lay down.
It was so hot. My people were burning in great rivers of lava.
It's all right. You're here now.
You are so kind.
It's the love of Jesus that has brought me here.
Is it Jesus who saves us from
He
that
is
place?
the light of the world. It is only through him that we are saved.
Oh. Perhaps I will try one of these prayers now. Yes, no.
Will be here soon.
No.
You wish to pray with him.
No, it's you. I wish to share my first prayer with.
Very well. And we will pray the way that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven.
Our Father, who art in heaven.
My brother had withdrawn himself and was calm. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. My soul failed me when he spake. The watchmen that surrounded the city, they found me, they smote me, they wounded me. The keepers of the walls
took away my veil from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if ye find my beloved, that ye tell him that I am sick of love.
Good morning, Hannah. Are you troubled, Hannah?
No.
Do not feel bad, Hannah. Reverend Bingham says that you may take the examination in another month. Someday you will be baptized.
It's all right.
Let us continue our work. You may begin reading with Matthew 13. And he spake many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside. Hannah, please continue. Hannah, sorry, please continue.
I don't know the place.
Hannah, you must pay attention. Matthew 13, verse 5.
And some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung because they had no deepness of earth.
What is wrong with you today? Jones came back. I see. I see. He wants her to be his wahine.
I told him that I would not come to his bed unless we made a Christian marriage.
You are very right. Hannah, God's love and acceptance of you requires your virtue.
He speaks so nicely to me. He says he loves me.
But if he will not marry you, it is not love, but only a bodily desire for you.
If only I could turn my thoughts away from him. I'm trying very hard.
Yes, I know. But you must learn to turn away from what is wicked, no matter how sweetly it calls you.
Can such kindness be wicked?
Yes, it is very clear. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up.
And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them.
Phil, please, come hurry!
How did this happen?
Holly!
Who did this to you?
I found her outside like this. A lady came by and spat at her.
Why?
But she called her that name.
What name?
Go on.
She's badly injured. Oh, help me to lie her on the mat.
Please go away.
Oh, you are in no state to go anywhere.
What if those people find you again?
Oh,
Hey, Kawa Oi. Kukapila.
oh, don't speak to her that way.
But she is Kawa.
Stop calling her that. She's a person just like everyone else.
I don't care anymore. I'm tired of always being afraid that someone might find out. My father gave me to a family when I was a baby. He wanted me to live without the shame. He's been giving this woman food, copper, pigs, just to keep me. He lived poorly so that I might have a life. It was him you saw being beaten in the village. Last night he came to find me, to tell me that my real mother is very sick and wishes once more to see me. Others of the woman's family saw him and forced her to tell the truth. That's why how you found me this way. But I don't care anymore. My father's better than any man in the village, whether he has the marks of a kawa or not. He's given everything for me. I'd rather stand by him than any other person. Even you. Ka'ahumanu.
Be quiet now.
That woman only liked what I brought to her table.
I must go now.
I know you will hate me now, Hannah.
Oh, Hannah won't hate you. Hannah, where is your Christian charity?
Try not to. Perhaps we should move her to the bed of the cellar.
Wait until the doctor looks at her.
You will keep her here,
Yes, we will.
but she will be a filthy thing in your house.
She needs our help.
Let's go, Hannah. She lied and deceived me.
She's been in my house many times.
I treated her as one of my own favorites. My own favorite. She should be punished.
Perhaps she is already.
Have you heard from Jones?
Only to talk.
What does he say?
He loves me and wishes me to share his bed.
And what do you wish?
I wish this, but I don't go. Oh, every day he comes to my house. Every day he asks me.
Tell him don't come.
Do you think it's wrong?
The laws of Jehovah seem to wrong, Hannah.
I tell him I can't sin. But he says I think too much about sin. He says that the Mi'kmaq worship God in a poison pit. He says that if we don't hurt others, we don't sin. And God will love us no matter what we do. He says he loves me better than any woman.
Then why doesn't he make a Christian marriage with you? Isn't that the way of his people?
But you said yourself that you thought it took more than words to keep a man.
Well, perhaps I was wrong.
I have come to ask you to have pity on Polly.
She lied and deceived me.
She was only trying to live a life like others. She is not from a dirty race.
She is.
Why do you think these people are so terrible?
They are what they are.
Think for a moment, Your Majesty. What if you had been brought up in such a station?
Me, I am Ali'i.
And what if your own father had suffered so that you could live a better life? Wouldn't you try to make the most of that life? Perhaps. And think, if you were this person who looked to her chiefess as the one who should protect and guide her, what would you hope that that chiefess would do?
Are you saying that I should treat these people differently? I am not one to advise the Kuhina Nui.
But I know this truth from the Holy Scripture. Now abideth faith, hope, and love. These three, but the greatest of these is love.
Let us have some tea.
No,
Please.
I have too much
No,
work to do.
you helped me. You helped me when I was ill. Please come. Stay. We will loan me you. Let us help you. Please stay. Try it.
Perhaps I will try.
Yes.
You've never tried it?
No, I haven't, Hannah.
It's very good. Your body will relax and make itself well.
Yes. Well, before you came, we spoke of Jones.
Oh? Yes. He wants Hana to come to him. Of course you won't go, Hannah. Of course I won't go. He says he loves her. Christian marriage is how a man proves his love.
All your life you will only have one man.
Yes, unless only if a husband dies may a woman take another husband.
You've only had one?
Yes. Well, although once, long ago, I was engaged to another man.
Engaged?
That is when a man and a woman promise that they will marry each other.
Promise?
Then others will know that they are taken.
What was his name?
His name?
Yes.
Levi. Mr. Levi Parsons.
Oh? Her mind and body relax. He was handsome, this man Parsons?
Oh, yes. He was like summer.
Where is he?
He was so kind, and I was so lonely.
Where is he?
Gone.
Where?
To be a missionary.
He's one of the Miganele?
Not here, in Turkey, far away. They told him that he could not take a wife. The man must go single.
He left you.
It was our duty to part.
But you loved him, didn't you?
Summer, we were so close. I have often wished.
You wished?
Yes, I wished it so. I must go.
Oh, no, don't get up too quickly. You're too deep.
Olin, I tell you, I must go. Oh. Remember me, the way that I was. I'm not this old woman I've become. All right, Hannah, you must choose between the sensual pleasures of the flesh and what you know to be your Christian duty to God. Choose!
I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, open to me, my sister, my love.
She came to our own bosom to be instructed, mature and meditative. Her mind seemed instinctively prepared to receive the word.
My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feedeth among the lilies.
More intelligent, more attractive, more refined. She was our joy, the crown of our school, rising to a new life, thoroughly instructed in a new system of morals. And we dared to believe that she loved the truth. The test came.
I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me.
Official wealth and power combined to turn the scale. Yet her conscience was so ill at ease, and she was just at the point of resisting when she found she had not the strength.
Many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it. If a man would give the substance of his house for love.
This is one of the keenest trials of a mission teacher. We plant a vineyard, and when we look for it to put forth grapes, it brings wild grapes.
Come, my beloved, let us go into the fields.
I loved her like the child of mine own brother or sister.
Set me as a seal upon thine heart.
Oh, that my head were waters, and that mine eyes were a fountain of tears,
that I might weep
for the slain daughters of my people. Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
There was, when I was younger, a woman who came to live in the hut nearby as a child. She was a strange woman with dark looks and knotty fingers. I knew she did not want her baby because many times I saw her gather plants to make a baby go away. But the baby wouldn't go away. And it grew inside her anyway. She had the baby in the dark, by herself. And when we went to see it, she told us to go away, that the baby was very sick and would not live. One night, when there was no moon, I saw her steal out with the child all wrapped up. I followed her into the forest. She went far into the night, into the uplands where no one lives but the mountain spirits and the ghost. I thought perhaps the baby had died and she had come to bury it. I thought perhaps its sickness had made it unbearable to look at, and she wanted no one to see it, even in death. She stopped at a place that was quiet and hidden. I watched her place the white bundle into the ground. She began to walk very quickly back and forth, looking at the bundle. Then she would pull and twist at her fingers. Over and over again, she did this until finally, she turned and ran. Muttering under her breath, she ran away. And I watched her disappear like a thin ribbon into the night. And there in the forest, I began to feel sorry for her. I felt sorry that she had lost her baby and could see that she now suffered from terrible loss and grief. I thought these things as I walked back, looking through the black branches at the night sky. I had gone some distance when I first heard it. It sounded like a small cry. So small I thought it was the faraway cry of an owl. But it came again. Louder, and a little louder, and louder. And I knew she would leave her child while it still had a life. The soft crying moved through me. I was sick. I ran back. Cold fear flew all around me. I ran as fast as I could toward the sound, but there was nothing there. I heard it again and ran. And again I would hear and run, searching, but finding nothing. For it seemed like hours I tried, but I could not find the place. Exhausted, I sat down and wept. I cried for everything, for the baby, myself, my father, all those like me in the world who had been cast aside and now suffered. I don't know how long I sat there so abandoned without hope. When all of a sudden, it came to me. It was as if loving hands had laid a kihei over my shoulders. And I was quiet. And in the quiet, I heard the voice of a baby clear and strong, crying in the night. I stood and walked straight to it. I gathered up the small life I was meant to save. I had made a new life, not for my body, but from a thrown away life that no one wanted. I took the baby far away to a kind woman I knew who would care for a child. I had given a new life. And now, that is what the Mika and Ale have given to me. A new life, from one that was unwanted, thrown away, and treated like so much rubbish. I have made you some tea.
Thank you, Polly. You are so kind, Polly.
No, it is you who have shown me kindness.
Do you like it here at the mission, Polly?
Yes, here I hide nothing.
We have talked it over, and I would like to ask you if you would stay on and work for us.
Stay.
You will have duties,
We need help, very much,
but don't expect pay. We have no money.
but could give you food, shelter, clothing.
And your father may come visit you here.
You don't care what I am?
We know what you are, Polly. You're kind, honest, hardworking.
But we do expect you to study the ways of our God.
Because of your kindness, I will study the way of God and make him mine.
The doctor says you have mended nicely.
You will let me wash the tea, please?
Now there's a good start.
And what does the doctor say of you, sister?
He says we must wait. He says some of these things go away by themselves.
But if it doesn't,
he will have to operate.
The Queen, it is past time that the Queen said she would call.
I feel so tired.
Lucy, go and rest. Go.
The lesson.
Do it.
I do feel strangely. I think I will go rest if you don't mind.
Please.
you have come for your lesson.
Yes. I brought you some fish. Oh, thank you very much. And some poi, fresh as you like it. You will spoil me. If good things aren't for good people, then who are they for? Well, I guess I don't know. I have been thinking about the church. You wish to join us? I have some thoughts.
You wish to share them with me?
Yes, but I don't wish to make you feel bad.
Feel bad? I will listen if you...
But how? How will you listen? With what ears will you listen and what tongue will you speak? That of the mission or of your own? I wish for you to listen.
I will hear your manana.
There are many things which I am happy to receive from this new God, your God. Jesus Christ, he is a kind God. And he shows us a way of mercy, such as the way you treat Kali. This is something that the gods, the old gods in the temple did not teach us, and women may teach about this God and speak to this God as you do.
That is an unusual duty of a mission wife.
Nevertheless, it is done. You do many good things.
We want to do good.
Yes, but something I just can't. Something makes me hold myself back from your God. You see, I remember the old days. The gods ruled over us in ways I did not like. So when I saw a chance to take them down, I did. I did away with them. But I see the way that this God, when he has a way with people who choose him, he has a strong hold on their hearts. And I know if I choose this God, the people will follow.
As they have always followed you.
Yes, but I also know that once this God takes hold, I will never be able to change the minds of the people.
He is a God of strength.
He is the God of white men.
Yes.
And the white men wish that they need to be lords all over us, always. If we follow this God, maybe some good will come out of it, some peace. I feel that other nations will see that we believe in the same God, and surely they'll want to protect the Christian people from wrong.
It is a good thought.
I know all the names the foreigners have for us. I know many of them think us ignorant savages. But perhaps some will surely want to protect a Christian people from wrong. My people are dying. We are dying race.
There is still hope that your people can revive themselves. Do not give up that hope.
You're so kind. But others of your race, will they ever lose their contempt? Will they ever cease to feel that they need to be lords over us?
I don't know.
Our ways are so different.
Yes.
I know that we can frighten the very heart of your Hawai'i world, as I can frighten the very heart of you, Ginamu Wahine.
Yes.
The big wave comes. How will I steer the canoe?
The doctor informs me that the tumor is rapidly altering. It approached the surface, exhibiting a dark spot. He said that should it become an open ulcer, the whole system would be overcome with its malignancy. He advised immediate operation, warning me that my system would not tolerate any drug to deaden the pain. I agreed to proceed. That night, after everyone had retired, I walked for many hours back and forth in the yard. Depraved, diseased, and helpless, I yield myself up entirely to the will of the Holy One. Cold daylight. The doctor now informs me all is ready. The chair, the white porcelain wash basin, the dozens of fresh, clean towels, the shiny medical instruments, the strings for tying up my arteries, the shiny needles to sew at my flesh. I sink into the chair, wishing it would swallow me away. The doctor shows me how I must hold my arm and how to press my feet against the foot of the chair. He looks at me. Have you made up your mind to have it cut out? Yes, sir. Are you ready now? Yes, sir. My shawl is removed, exhibiting my left arm. My breast and side are perfectly bare. I see the knife in the doctor's hand. I'm going to begin now. Yes, sir. Then comes a gash, long and deep, first on one side of my breast and then on another. Deep sickness seizes me and deprives me of my breakfast. This is followed by extreme faintness. My sufferings are no longer local. Agony spreads through my whole system. I feel every inch of me failing. Every glimpse I have of the doctor is only his hand covered to the wrist with blood. It seems like hours that I feel my flesh cut away. I am beneath his hand, cutting out the entire breast, cutting out the glands, cutting under the arms, tying up the arteries and sewing up the wound. I know it is vanity. I am grateful for what small dignity God has granted. Collaboration he has granted that I do not lose control of my voice or person. Kindly, he says, there is not one in 1,000 who could have borne it as you have done. Many dangers still lie before me. I am greatly debilitated and often see duplicates of everything my eye beholds. Now that it is over, a hollowness falls over me. Sister,
How are you, Lucy?
I don't know.
You're still weak.
Yes,
Is there any pain?
yes, and a kind of emptiness.
The doctor says I must change the dressing.
Oh,
I hope.
I know now I'll be nothing but ashamed to my husband.
Don't say that, Lucy.
Everyone knows. That's the first thing they'll think when they see I'll be ashamed of him.
Don't think like that.
You know it's true.
You must thank God for your life, Lucy.
Yes, I must.
I have to change the dressing.
Yes.
Does it look,
It's not a pretty sight, Sybil, I'm sorry. And there's an odor, not pleasant.
I see. Look, I have to change it.
I'm sorry, Sybil.
God help me, I'm sick. I can't do it. I'm sorry, Sybil. It is I who am sorry. I want so much. I'm so ashamed. Is it very hard to see? Yes, for me. I want so much to help you. And
It's all right, Sybil.
I have tended the sick many times. I don't understand these feelings.
You must go get the doctor to do it.
It frightens me, Lucy.
It won't happen to you, Sybil.
You were right. Anything could happen to us out here.
Don't say any more, please. Just go get the doctor to see it.
I'm so sorry.
I wish to do this for you, Mrs. Thurston.
Holly,
I.
it may sicken you.
No, tell me what to do. You will tell me what to do, and I will do it.
First, you must change the old dressings.
I.
And then you must wash the wound with Holly. I will remember your kindness all my days.
Good morning. Aloha. You are resolved to study for your baptism. Yes. Holly will be baptized this Sunday. She will? Yes. She has studied very hard.
The Christian path is not always an easy one.
But it is the one that brings salvation.
I need a needle.
You may sit here and sew.
Perhaps I am not wanted.
You know these questions for baptism, Holly?
I.
Then you will come here and sit by me and help me. Holly, you will begin the lesson by asking the questions.
Me? You wish me to ask the questions?
Yes. You.
The first question is, what is sin?
Sin is any want of or conformity to the laws
Or transgression?
or transgression of the laws of God.
What is the sin by where our first parents fell?
The sin by where our first parents fell is the eating. Polly, you read it first and I'll follow you.
The sin by where our first parents fell was the eating of the forbidden fruit.
Aloha, Hana. I hear from the village that you've gone to live with Jones.
Yes. What will you choose, my lady?
Why did you do it, Hana?
I thought this new God, this new way of being, would fill me up full of happiness, like I thought it did to make another. And for a time it did. But the happiness went farther and farther away, something to wait for after death. And I remember what you once said to me, that happiness is something you need while we are alive. Come away from that. Don't join them in the thought that everything which gives pleasure is sad. Come back to the way things were before.
We cannot go back to the way things were before, Hana. The world changes before our very eyes, and we must change or be lost. Besides, things will never be as they were before. I will put aside the old ways because the people need a new way. For this new world that comes to us, we will have laws. We will be a Christian people.
I can never follow this way. I believe there is another way.
What way is that?
I don't know. I only know that I can't follow the ways of their God, although I know their ways to be good. It is something inside that cannot be closed off, and this is what will happen to me if I listen to them.
Our lives take us on separate journeys, Hana. Aloha, my kua.
Will Thomas is bringing something for me?
Yes, what is it?
Tell her that it is summertime.
Aloha, my kua. And may the old gods watch over your life. Yes, I have listened to you, my brothers. Now hear my thoughts. The foreigners are among us, and many more will come. Beware. Many of them will come, like the hungry caterpillars hiding their hunger to devastate the land as we know it, until the time comes when the Hawaiians will be underfoot and downtrodden. We have seen this already with the sandalwood trade. We have seen this greed. Do not hesitate. We must think and fight fast with our quick thoughts and our grasp of foreign ways. To think too long is to ignore the hungry sharks that swim among us. I do not look to the past with contempt, but rather seek to preserve that which was good and unite it with what is good of this new world that comes to us now.
All right, so I will leave the space for Justina and Victoria maybe to talk more. And if there's any questions, at least I have one to Amity and Carla to address those. Thank you.
So I see a question in the chat posed to Vicky. Vicky, did you want to say anything else first, or you want to go straight to the question?
Well, I did want to say some things about the play first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I wrote this play almost like 35 years ago. It was the second full-length play that I wrote, and I was still a graduate student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And while I was a graduate student, I had 3 jobs, and one of them was working at the Mission Houses Museum in Honolulu as a guide to the historic site. And we had a living history program there. It was called Honolulu 1831. And we, you know, we interpreted the interaction between missionaries and Hawaiians. And so my character in that living history program was Hannah. So she's the character that I played in the living history program. I transformed into the play. And I, you know, I eventually went into, you know, work as a museum educator. And at the time, you know, as a graduate student, and I was working at this historic site, and I really became aware of how histories were written, you know, mostly by, especially histories about Hawaii. That's what I was thinking of, not, but it applies to history in general, is that then they were written mostly by men then, and women were left out. And, you know, the interpretation of history centered on these huge and big events. And a lot of the times, you know, Hawaiian issues were really taken out of the context that they happened in. So while I was thinking about those things, I was taking this class. You probably took it too, Justina, from Julie, Women in Drama, where we, you know, we really looked at feminist theater. And as a playwright, I was really taken with those British feminist playwrights at, you know, I think they were writing in the 70s and the early 80s. And so I wanted to incorporate a lot of those stage values that they had into this play, like a play that was about women by, of course, I was a woman writing it, and that most of the roles in the play be more or less equal, and that there was no huge big star, you know, and then the rest of them were minor roles. And also that different social classes were represented, and that people were, they were people, not, you know, stereotypes of the missionary and the Hawaiian. And the other thing that I was really, that you know, I should have seen this years ago, but it's interesting, when we were taught Hawaiian, our own history, it was always kind of in the context of, you know, foreigners guiding the show, and that our ali'i and our chiefs were just kind of these passive people who sat there and were led around, you know, by the nose, which, you know, when you start looking into Hawaiian history, you see is absolutely not what was going on. But that was the way the histories at that time were written. And so that was a really, especially with Ka'ahumanu, I wanted to show that she knew what was going on. and you know, that particular time in Hawaiian history, the early 19th century, was really tough, and that, you know, she was aware of what was going on and was perfectly capable of making decisions for her people, which she did. And so anyway, those were the things, some of the things that were going through my mind when I wrote the play. Those are the ones I could remember. So anyway, that's just, I just wanted to say those things.
So there's a question in the chat, and I'll pose it to you since I have the chat box open. Seeing the cultural and personal conflicts as sex politics change with the Civilization Project, Norales would like to hear from you, Vicky, about your interest in addressing this in the play.
Okay. Sex politics. Well, I'm not quite sure. Are you talking about, the relationships between foreign men and Hawaiian women? Is that what you're interested in, or?
Yeah, so when they start, right, talking about marriage and the consummation of love, and they have to follow the Christian guidelines, right, the rules. There is this conversation about sinners, right, that are highly in conflict with the cultural practices that are already established, right, by people in Hawaii. Yeah.
Well, that certainly was a huge issue at that time, and it really affected, especially the ali'i, who were the ones that were first interested in Christianity, a lot of times in adverse ways. Kauikeuli, who was Kamehameha III, he came to the throne as a very young person. So he kind of grew up as a king. He had one of the longest reigns in Hawaii, but he was supposed to marry his sister. And he was, the ali'i, the brother-sister marriage is like, it preserves the mana of this family. I mean, it was something that it's called, what is it called? You stand a ni'opio. Yeah, it's anyway, it's a, and he was kind of in love with her, and she, they said, no, you can't do that. And it was very traumatic for him. I think she got, if I remember correctly, she was pregnant, the baby died, she died. He went into this long period of grief where he moved to Maui, and so that's one example. Another one is Keopuolani, who was one of the Kahumanu mentions her. She was the one of Kamehameha's wives who gave birth to the subsequent chiefs. She confided in her Tahitian teacher and said, do I have to do this? I have these two Kane husbands, and do I have to pick one? And he said, oh yeah, you have to pick one. So I think that was extremely difficult. And later on, I know I'm giving a long-winded answer to a simple question, but there was one incident later in the 19th century where, because Christian marriage was instituted, this chief was married to this one woman, and he decided he wanted to be married to another woman, but he couldn't, right? So he poisoned his first wife and so he could marry this other woman, and then he got caught, and then he was hung, according to the new Western laws. So yeah, it did the difference in sexuality did cause, I think, a lot of upheaval, especially among the ali'i. I think among the more common people weren't paying, well, maybe they were, I don't know. But anyway, yeah.
I'd never heard of a hanging before.
Oh yeah.
Other than Katsugoto lynching.
No, it was Kalakawa's grandfather. And the royal school was marched, I think, they kind of witnessed, they all witnessed. Yeah, it was really bad. Yeah.
Okay, there's a question from Marina. Can you discuss more the feminist themes, such as Ka'ahumanu's discussion on equality, having access to gods? Was it informed by 1980s politics?
Well, I have to say that because that's when I was writing it, and because I was the writer, there's no way to escape that. But I do know that, when the missionaries first came to Hawaii, they were kind of, the chiefs kind of ignored them. They just like, go live out there and, out of town. They gave them a really junk place to stay. And they weren't paying that much attention to them. But I think, Ka'ahumanu, she was kind of known for her ability to strategize. So, I mean, while it may seem like I could have projected a lot of 1980s politics onto it, I don't think politics changed that much, and in the, I think the chiefs saw right away that they were vulnerable to foreigners because they had all of this firepower, they had cannons, they had guns, and that there were many more of them than there were Hawaiians, because Hawaiians were dying out like you wouldn't believe. So the chiefs, were in a situation where they really had to figure out how they could retain their own power. And I think that Christianity was one way of protecting themselves from the outside world. And so in that sense, I don't think that was 1980s politics. I mean, the particulars of it, in the conversations, of course, could have been, but I think part of becoming Christian was that, there was the idea that if they were Christian, other Christian people wouldn't be so harsh. And the really early missionaries were the ones that were sticking up for the authority of the chiefs against all of this, chaos that, the sailors who hung their conscience on the horn were practicing, So anyway, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah. Cynthia has a question. Were there any challenges in doing your research, and what kinds of sources were you able to access?
Well, because I was working at the Mission Houses Museum, because I was in that living history program and I was playing Hana, when we were in that program, I had to not only, and Hana was a real, based on a real person in Honolulu in the early 19th century. All of those characters were, Pali is the only really composite character. The other ones were pretty much, there as part of the mission or anyway. But we had to not only find all the primary source material we could in the mission archives about our characters, but we had to have a really good handle on what we would know as people in Honolulu in 1831, which means, you have to know a long backstory too. So the mission archives has an incredible amount of missionary letters and journals, and they also had some letters that the chiefs had written to, when they first learned to write. And so there was a lot of material there that I had to know before I even started writing the play, because I was in that program. So actually, when I look back on it, I wrote the play pretty fast, just like some plays I've struggled with for like a really long time, but this one it was all right there. So I had a lot of primary source material right at my fingertips because of my job.
Yeah, you'd been doing the research for years before you started writing it.
Well, a couple of years anyway. Yeah.
Marina asks, Virginia, you have a question?
Yeah. I was really interested in your inclusion of Lucy Thurston's breast cancer
and surgery.
which I think was done years later. I mean, it actually, like it actually happened in 1855, I think.
Yeah, it happened much later.
And I was wondering, you know, what made you decide to include that in the play? Was it to sort of show the plight of women, the medical plight of women, or?
Well, one of the things, you know, about Lucy Thurston is that I didn't really like her very much as an, you know, some of the mission women that I looked at, there was things about them that I actually really liked. And Lucy was one of those women that there were some things about her, I kind of, you know, she was a really hard worker and she was extremely determined, and but on the other hand, unlike Sybil Bingham, when you look at Sybil Bingham's journal, you don't see the racism that you do in Lucy Thurston's journals.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that outright kind of, ooh, I'm here to do this job, but ooh, these people, you know. And so I guess I needed to have some sympathy for her as a writer, but also I wanted to show how those women that came out here from their home in New England, you know, there were a lot of, they were actually like the progressives of their time, although we think of them as, you know, these horrible Puritans, but compared to other people in New England who really did think Polynesians were not human, you know, they were kind of the progressives of their time. And that, you know, they came out here and there was a lot of suffering among the women, you know. I think they, you know, they all gave up their kids, they sent them away to go to, you know, so I wanted to show some of that, you know, and also
and they missed their families at home. They never saw, most of them never saw their family, you know, members of family of origin again.
Yeah, and so I wanted to show that and to have some sympathy for Lucy, because she's not, you know. But the other thing is you know, there's that thing about kindness, you know, that the kindness that Polly shows her, she's not totally unaware of. So I just wanted to show that that was possible between women, you know, that when you do something for somebody that's really hard, that kind of kindness, it goes both ways, you know. And that's one thing I felt, that might be one of my 80s projections, you know, but to me, that kind of behavior between people is healing. So
as a director, that was a key moment in the play for me. That was so important because to me, it encapsulated the compassion that is an overall theme of the play. There are so many differences and things people are struggling with, but compassion is what brings them all together.
You know, and Justina, when you look at a lot of the missionary women's journals, you see more of that than I think than when you look at the men's journals, that they're more, you know, they're more compassionate about illness and suffering. And I think it occupies their sphere a little bit more than, you know, the men's journals.
But at the same time, I read some journals and some records about a mother's club that the missionary women had, where they would meet together and talk about motherhood and talk about raising their children and all of that. Yeah. And that was very common here in the States. So it was something that they carried with them from, you know, from New England. But they, in some parts of those records, you can see that they really didn't want their children playing with the Hawaiian children.
Oh, no. Yeah.
They didn't want their children learning the Hawaiian language. They built big walls around their house to keep you know, to keep their children separate. And part of the reason why they sent their children back to the States for education too was because they were afraid of the influence of the Hawaiian peer group, you know, the Hawaiian children. So I think they had very mixed feelings, very mixed feelings.
Yeah, but you know what you have to be careful not to do is to think that all of them felt that way. And all of them were doing that, and all of them. And certainly Lucy Thurston did that, you know, she built that wall, and Sybil Bingham. But actually, you know, my great-great-great, or is it my great-great-grandfather, he was a missionary from Britain to Tahiti. And the thing they don't say in their journals, but some of them in Tahiti did, is the thing they were afraid of was sex.
Yeah.
That was the reason that a lot of the Tahitian missionaries sent their, especially their sons, back, wherever they came from, because, I mean, even though Christianity was introduced, the Hawaiian sexuality, it wasn't erased overnight, you know, so that was a huge concern. And yes, you know, there was that, you do see that separation, certainly in a lot of those journals too. But there's other things you also see too that are very compassionate. So,
yeah, I think the role of women as nurturer, I think, exists in both cultures. So there are places where the women overlap and connect.
Yeah, and I really think, you know, the success of Christianity in Hawaii, the women aren't given credit for that. You know, the missionary women aren't given much credit for that, but I think they did most of the heavy lifting. And I want to add too that I'm a Buddhist. So I was not writing the play to be, you know, to support Christianity in any way. I just thought it was like a really fascinating time, and a really, you know, this kind of colliding of these two cultures at this time was totally fascinating to me.
Well, I think the kind of Christianity that the Hawaiians, you know, it allowed to, you know, the kinds of Christians they came are very different than the New England Protestants. I mean, they really incorporated a lot of Hawaiian culture, you know, generosity. I mean, you know, the family, it was much more a combination of Hawaiian culture with Christianity.
Yeah, later on, I think that's very true. That it's really interesting. The early missionaries are super strict, and you know, they don't want to baptize anybody until they're super sure they're going to be good, because otherwise they have to kick them out of the church if they get bad. But you know, and the missionary, because the mission lasted so long, from 1820 to, I think it's officially dissolved in 1860, but the Hawaiian Evangelical Association is still there. The character of the missionaries themselves and the kind of Christianity that they practice changes over that period of time. Also, so well, that makes a big difference. But, you know, as the Hawaiian culture got more and, you know, more and more oppressed, I don't know how else to say it, more and more colonized, the churches became these central gathering places for Hawaiian communities. And, you know, I have to say, it's still like that today in a lot of those Hawaiian churches. They're, you know, it's been a place, it was like, became like a refuge for a lot of Hawaiian people.
We are over time. There are 2 questions left in the chat that I'd like to make sure we touch on before we run away. So Norales asks, Justina, what called you to do the play? Can you talk more about deciding to do an all-woman cast, or is the play written for an all-woman cast only? So the play is written for an all-woman cast only. What called me to do it? First of all, I love Vicky's work. I would direct every single one of her plays if I could. Someday, maybe I'll get through them all. Second of all, it was 200 years since the arrival of first missionaries, and our lives are so impacted in every way in Hawaii because of that. And so I just wanted to, local theater is my passion, and I wanted to touch on that and share that bit of history with the community through theater. So it was the social aspect, not necessarily the feminist aspect, that drew me to it. But also, you know, I last week I mentioned that this play was criticized for having an all-female cast.
What this play needs is some men.
Right. And I don't agree with that at all. So obviously I wanted to produce it even more. But I also, my production plan included the students from the Navajo Kalani Opu'u Hawaiian Language Immersion School, and I wanted to bring them into it to bring the play into the present in a way and show the youth of today interacting with that story. And because of COVID, the video we have doesn't include them, but they did send me their pieces. So they did some slam poetry in response to the characters and the story. So this month I'll be editing those pieces into the rehearsed parts that you saw. And we will be airing it on the March 31st, April 1st, which is officially the 1 year from when we were supposed to open with the production. And then the other question is for Vicky again, which is from Carla. What were your feelings, vision, when you wrote about how Hawaii women and missionary women experienced and understood their lives, power, and the acts of care for each other?
Can you read it again?
Yeah. What were your feelings / vision when you wrote about how Hawaii women and missionary women experienced and understood their lives, power, and the acts of care for each other?
You know, I have to be honest. I guess I was because I was immersed in that material in my job. I was really impressed with, the strength of all of those women, you know, and I was, because I played Hana, I was very, she was such a vulnerable character, you know. I was really impressed with the relationships that those women developed with each other. You know, Hana had a very close relationship with those missionary women, and she really struggled with whether she wanted to go and live with the American Council or not, which she ended up doing and having 2 kids with him. But the way they treated each other, the missionary women, the way they kind of, well, most of them treated each other was quite supportive. And, you know, they had to be tough to come out here, right? And to, you know, marry guys they just met the day before. So, you know, and the Hawaiian women, you know, especially not just Kahumanu, but other women that weren't mentioned in the play, like Keopulani is mentioned, Liliha, you know, all of these female ali'i who were extremely strong women too. I just was really attracted to that story and their relationships, and how during a really chaotic and sad time, they forged these relationships, and they did things to try and strengthen the Hawaiian people. You know, whether it was through health issues, or teaching reading and writing, or you know, supporting each other by, you know, being there. I was really taken with all of them, the good and the bad, you know, because I'm not there, right? I'm looking back. So it's easier to forgive people when they're not there. But I think anyone who looks back at that time, you know, really carefully, will see those things. Although it takes a lot of time and focus to do that. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
We are way over time. Norales gave a nice comment, and I think that's a nice way to wrap things up. Norales, would you just like to say that out loud to everybody, and then we'll close our session?
Yeah, well, I couldn't avoid crying when Kahumanu is suffering for the people that are dying, and that prayer that she's, right, as she cries. And so it makes me think, I cannot help but to think about the pandemic and how the play is still so relevant to the present time. So yeah, it's something that I think, even though you're doing it, right, and that you were supposed to play it a year ago, what was coming after that, and how our lives have changed so much. But then, yeah.
It's relevant still today.
In a very unexpected way.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we have another presentation on April 16. Hopefully we will see you all. Thank you so much for this amazing experience.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.